for the next final leg of this event. And I'll introduce our next speaker. So our next speaker is Eric. Eric Zeng is a PhD candidate in the Paul G. Allen School of Computer Science and Engineering at the University of Washington. His research lies at the intersection of computer security and privacy and human-computer interaction, and has covered areas including online advertising, online misinformation and disinformation, smart homes, and encrypted email. Eric is going to speak on his research on bad ads and what constitutes bad ads, and it's really, really fascinating. So over to you, Eric. You might be on mute.
Thank you. Thank you for that great intro, Shwetank. I'm really happy to be here. Let me just pull up my slides really quick. So today I will be giving my talk on this multi-year research effort that we've been doing at the University of Washington on characterizing and measuring bad ads on the internet. So let's dive into it. So online advertising is a pretty critical part of the modern internet, as it provides financial support for websites, content creators, and services used by billions of people. But many users dislike seeing some types of ads. Well, why is that? Well, if you read the academic literature, there are a few well-studied reasons. First, people find ads like pop-ups to be intrusive and annoying. Second, people are uncomfortable with the privacy risks that online ads can create. And third, ads can make websites slow and less responsive. But what about the content of the ads themselves? This area has received far less attention, at least in the academic literature, but I think really affects how people see and perceive online ads. So when you're browsing around the web without an ad blocker, you may notice a lot of ads that seem problematic in some way. So for example, ads that promote potentially unwanted programs, ads for clickbait articles and content farms, and ads that are just simply unpleasant to look at. And anecdotal reporting in the media and recent research studies have shown that ads like these are fairly common. And ads like these can be bad for user experience, they can be potentially harmful for users if they're scamming them, and they can be harmful to the reputation of the website and harmful to the web and ad ecosystem as a whole. So I think it's important for us to look at the content as well as all these other important facets of ads. And so these ads exist in a gray area when it comes to content moderation. So if we consider all of the ads that advertisers try to run, many ads are likely acceptable. For example, ads for just ordinary products and services that use honest claims and make clear disclosures about being an ad. On the other hand, ads that include explicit, hateful, or deceptive content are clearly not acceptable. And this is already the type of thing that is being removed by content moderators at ad networks. However, for the examples that I just showed, it's not quite as clear what to do. These ads aren't clearly harmful, like outright scams, nor are they clearly benign. And so despite being potentially harmful to the user experience, these ads are allowed to run. However, there's just not a lot that we know about this gray area. For example, how widespread are these bad ads? How do they affect users? And where should we draw the line for what should be acceptable? And so by trying to answer these questions, we hope that we can help ad networks and publishers keep ads that are detrimental to user experience off of the internet. So in my talk today, we'll explore 3 broad research questions on this topic of bad ads. So first, how do we define bad ads? Second, how prevalent are bad ads? And third, I'll talk about an interesting case study where we investigated what kind of bad ads ran during the 2020 US elections. So starting with how do we define bad ads? So I'll present some findings from 2 of our papers which answer these questions from different perspectives. First, our paper Bad News, Clickbait and Deceptive Ads on News and Misinformation Websites, which appeared at the IEEE Consumer Protection Workshop in 2020. And second, our paper What Makes a Bad Ad? User Perceptions of Problematic Online Advertising, which appeared at CHI 2021. And both of these papers were joint work with Yoshi Kono and Franzi Rosner, professors at the University of Washington. So how do we define bad ads? So this is sort of like an inherently subjective exercise, and it really depends on the values of the person making the judgment. So with that in mind, we've tried 2 different approaches. So First, we can just try to ask people directly about what kinds of ads they don't like. So in our paper at Chi 2021, we conducted a large-scale survey to try to understand why people dislike ads, what kinds of ads that they dislike, and using this information to create a taxonomy for bad ads grounded in user opinion. Second, we can try to make expert judgments about ads that we consider misleading or deceptive. So in our paper at ConPro in 2020, we manually analyzed a data set of over 5,000 ads, which we scraped from news websites on the web. And we used qualitative methods to systematically identify categories of potentially misleading or harmful ads. So next, I'll talk about the definitions that we identified using both of these approaches. So in our user-based approach, we started by asking people why they disliked ads. And so we showed a set of 30 ads to a group of 60 people and asked, what do you like or dislike about this particular ad? And so based on their responses, we identified 9 distinct reasons for disliking them. First, people often dislike ads that are boring, not relevant to them, or unclear. People also dislike poorly designed and ugly ads that promote products that they don't like, politicized ads, and ads that are offensive, uncomfortable, or distasteful. Lastly, people dislike ads that attempt to mislead them. So many participants dislike the use of clickbait tactics in ads. So literally ads that use sensationalism to bait people into clicking on them. They also dislike ads that appear untrustworthy and ads that use a pushy or manipulative tone. Next, we want to identify which kinds of content would evoke those reasons for disliking ads. For example, what kinds of ad content do people find deceptive? So to answer these questions, we conducted a larger labeling survey where we asked 1,000 people to label why they liked or disliked 500 ads, using those reasons that we discovered from the first survey. We then used a technique called population label distribution learning to identify the groups of ads which people applied their similar labels to. So I'll talk about 2 of those clusters that people disliked the most. So first, participants disliked ads which they suspected of being scams, labeling them as deceptive, clickbait, or ugly. And so these included ads for software downloads that looked suspicious, ads for weight loss supplements that made dubious claims, and advertorials for products like insurance and mortgage refinancing. Another cluster of ads that people disliked were ads with gross and distasteful content, when they labeled them as clickbait, deceptive, and distasteful. These include ads for supplements that use distasteful pictures, ads for listicles that use provocative images, and ads for tabloids and celebrity gossip. And so we actually found 16 clusters in total. We didn't have, and I don't have time to talk about all of them, but we have a visualization at our website at badads.cs.washington.edu. So if you're interested in looking more, please look there. So moving on to our researcher-centric approach. So in this approach, we crawled over 5,000 ads from 200 mainstream news and misinformation websites on the web. And through an iterative qualitative process, we generated a code book for describing and labeling the types of ad content we observed. And so in our judgment, we coded many ads that we found as benign, such as ads for ordinary products or services, or legitimate political ads. But we identified 10 categories of problematic ads in our data set. So ads that we identified as potentially misleading or harmful to consumers, either based on prior work, regulations, or our own judgment. And so our categories included content farms and listicles, advertorials that read like articles but are really trying to sell products, investment pitches that use sensationalist claims to sell investment advice in newsletters, potentially unwanted programs like adware and spyware, and ads for dietary supplements. So now that we sort of have a sense of what kinds of ads might be considered bad, the next question we asked is how prevalent are bad ads? So in particular, what % of ads might be bad? What kinds of sites do these ads appear on? And which ad networks and platforms are responsible for serving them? And so I'll describe our findings here, and these come from the same 2 papers, which we covered in the last section. So first, looking at the prevalence of bad ads in our survey-based study where we asked users what they disliked. So looking at the the data set that we had there, again, we had used a crawler to scrape ads, a random sample of 500 ads from the top ranked websites on the web. And we had 1,000 participants label this data set with 10 people labeling each ad. And so this graph shows the percentage of those 500 ads where over half of the participants used the same label. And so we can see that participants felt that over 20% of the ads were clickbait, 11% and over 11% of the ads were deceptive. And so this shows that like a pretty significant proportion of the ads on the web are seemingly disliked by users. Second, we'll look more at our researcher-labeled data set of ads. So in here, we labeled 5,400 ads from 2 different types of sites, mainstream news websites and news sites labeled by fact checkers as misinformation, on our hypothesis that lower quality sites would have worse ads in terms of quality. And so what we found was that bad ads are fairly common. And so of the ads we labeled, about half on both mainstream and low quality news sites were in our problematic categories. And we didn't actually find a substantial difference between these mainstream and misinformation sites, which suggests that the quality of sites doesn't necessarily have a bearing on the quality of ads appearing on them. In our investigation of news sites, we also found that bad ads were most common in a deceptive format known as native advertising. And so native ads differ from standard display ads because they try to imitate the look and the feel of the websites that they're trying to run on. So for news websites, native ads are designed to imitate links to news articles. And so looking specifically at native ads, we found that they overwhelmingly contained the bad ads in our categories, and we labeled about 87% of the native ads in our data set as problematic, compared to only 16.6% of display ads. And so we traced these native ads to a few specific ad platforms in our data set, so including Taboola, Outbrain, RevContent, and ZergNet. So now that we've explored some definitions for bad ads and how prevalent they are on the web, I'll turn to a timely and important case study of bad ads during the 2020 US elections. So these are results from our paper, Polls, Clickbait, and Commemorative $2 Bills, Problematic Political Advertising on News and Media Websites Around the 2020 Elections. And this paper will appear at the Internet Measurement Conference next month. And this is joint work with Miranda Wei, Theo Gregerson, Yoshi Kono, and Franzi Rosner from the University of Washington. So on November 3rd, 2020, the US held a presidential election between Joe Biden and President Donald Trump. And the stakes were very high given the issues facing the US, including the handling of the COVID-19 pandemic, the resulting economic crisis, the renewed movement for racial justice, and more. And so as one of the most important and contentious elections in recent history, by most metrics, spending on online political advertising has set new records. So here's a graph of digital ad spend in millions of dollars since 2008. And spending has dramatically risen, reaching over $2.5 billion in the last year. The pandemic also heightened online political advertising as campaigns shifted from in-person events to more online and TV ads. On just Facebook and Google, the Trump and Biden campaigns spent over $200 million each. So the importance of this election and the prevalence of online political advertising led us to 2 main research questions. So first, what was the extent of political advertising, specifically on news websites in this election? And specifically, how many ads were political, who was running them, and on which sites? And so in this paper, we specifically focused on ads on the web in general and not ads on social media platforms. We also used a broad definition for political ads, including any kind of ad, and so we include any type of ad that references US politics, not just ads from political campaigns. So our second research question was, what kinds of misleading or manipulative content did political ads contain? So we know from our prior work that ads can be used for scams, malware, or be perceived as harmful and distasteful. So do we find examples of this in political ads? So to answer these questions, we conducted a longitudinal measurement study of online advertising from October 2020, a month before the election, until Inauguration Day in January 2021. We built a web crawler using Puppeteer, a browser automation library. And so this crawler on each page would automatically identify ads using ad blocker filter lists. and then it would systematically save a screenshot of every ad it sees on the page. We conducted daily crawls on 745 news websites, excluding social media like Facebook. We picked a combination of mainstream news sources such as CNN and local TV stations, and websites that fact checkers identified as misinformation, including fake news sites, propaganda outlets, and highly partisan news sources. And our goal was to focus on contextual ad targeting, so our crawler crawled each domain with a clean profile with no cookies or history. To capture geographically targeted political ads, we used a VPN service to tunnel our crawl through different locations in the US. We crawled from 6 locations in our study so that our data contained ads seen in Democratic-leaning, Republican-leaning, and toss-up states. To analyze the data that we collected, we used a mix of natural language processing techniques, qualitative analysis, and quantitative analysis. So our crawler collected 1.4 million ads in total in the form of screenshots of ads and metadata like the URL of the page that the ads appeared on. To enable automated analysis, we extracted the text of the ads using optical character recognition. Then, to reduce redundant processing, we identified duplicate ads using locality-sensitive hashing. And then we used 2 language modeling techniques to further sort our data. So first, to discover the topics of the ads in our data set, we used a topic model. We created a topic model using a Dirichlet multinomial mixture model. And second, to analyze political ads in depth, we trained a classifier for identifying political ads using the pre-trained Distilbert model. Then we performed a qualitative analysis of all the political ads found by our classifier, manually labeling them with attributes such as the party affiliation of the advertiser. So next, I'll talk about a few selected findings from our results. I don't have time to get into all of them, but we'll have a link to the paper at the end of the talk. But first, I'll present an overview of the political ads in our data set, showing longitudinal trends and how these ads are distributed. And then I'll present some case studies of particular problematic political ads. So starting with the overview. So these graphs show the number of ads and political ads that we collected over time, where each line represents the number of ads seen by a particular crawler. So unfortunately, we have several gaps in our data due to bugs and outages. But we observed that the total amount of ads that we saw was relatively constant before and after election day at around 5,000 ads per day. However, if we look specifically at political ads, we see that the number of political ads dropped substantially after the election from up to 450 ads per day down to around 125 per day. In our qualitative analysis, we subdivided our political ads into 3 categories. So campaign and advocacy ads explicitly promoted a specific candidate, issue, or election. And this category of ads made up 39% of all of the political ads we collected. Political product ads are primarily intended to sell a product, but include political content as part of the ad and comprised 8% of our political ads. And political news and media ads promote content from news outlets, which comprise 52% of our political ads. And so these also include the native ads that we talked about previously, which are designed to imitate first-party news article links on the web page. So in our quantitative analyses, we found that political ads in our dataset appeared more frequently on partisan websites. We also found that political advertisers tended to advertise more on sites with similar political leanings. For example, Democratic Party campaigns advertise more on left-leaning sites, and Republican and conservative campaigns advertise more heavily on right-leaning sites. So this suggests that online political ads are targeted at people who are interested in politics and read more from partisan sources. So lastly, I'll discuss some case studies of particularly misleading and deceptive political ads that we encountered in our dataset. So one category of problematic political ads we discovered were misleading political polls. So these ads looked like opinion polls or petitions and urged people to cast their vote on really hot button political issues. However, to submit a vote, you almost always had to provide your email address to do so. And then if you submit your vote and your email address, doing so will subscribe you to a mailing list. And these mailing lists we found will do things like ask for campaign donations. They'll advertise questionable products like supplements, or in some cases, they were even used to spread political misinformation. We also observed problematic techniques in some of our product ads. So we saw many ads promoted political memorabilia, like this $2 bill commemorating the US Space Force. Our topic modeling showed that most memorabilia ads were Trump-related. And a number of these ads used a common bait and switch tactic of claiming to be free, but then requiring you to pay for shipping and handling. Other political ads leverage this political climate to sell some of their products as well. So for example, one ad claimed that this stock could soar with a Biden win, which tries to lure consumers to with politically relevant get-rich-quick schemes. We also saw many political products targeting older adults, like this ad for hearing devices referencing Trump signing a bill into law. A final group of potentially problematic political ads were clickbait stories. So these ads are intended to drive traffic to content farms and listicle sites. They often use sensationalist headlines that imply some sort of controversy around a politician. And however, we found that the underlying articles were often less scandalous than the headline would imply. But the fact that these ads run on various news websites mean that the ads could be muddying the waters and generating this sense of controversy, even if people don't click on them. So we'll end with a discussion of a common thread in these political ads, and that is how these ads use politics as a means for profit. So in the case studies that we just showed, all of these ads use controversial political figures or issues to attract attention and clicks, sometimes using deceptive techniques. The true purpose of these ads were ultimately to earn some kind of profit, either by selling products, harvesting personal information like email addresses, or earning revenue through ads on the landing page. But all these come with potential costs to our information ecosystem. By leveraging political controversies, they contribute to the polarized political environment and could make it harder for people to access accurate information. I'll end my talk with some recommendations on what we might be able to do about bad ads to try to improve the health and quality of the online ad ecosystem. So first, we suggest that ad networks should step up moderation of bad ads by updating their content policies to forbid more types of ads that users dislike, such as distasteful supplements and deceptive advertorials. Ad networks should also pay more attention to the use of deceptive content and misinformation in political advertising. For example, they should look more closely at ads with political content used to harm personal information or sell products, ensure that these campaigns aren't spreading harmful misinformation. Second, we suggest that all ad platforms and networks provide some method for users to report and provide feedback on the ads they see. And then they should take these reports seriously and remove ads that consistently receive poor ratings. Though Google, Facebook, and others already have such a feature, this isn't available on all ads on the web. And even for the ones that do allow users to report them, users might not be familiar with how to do so, or the interfaces might even be hidden from them. And then lastly, we suggest that there's some sort of structural reform in the ad ecosystem to address issues with ad content. Ads today are served through a convoluted network of ad tech companies, and it seems that this complexity means it's not clear who has ultimate responsibility for moderating the content, and thus many companies in this space can pass the buck to others in the supply chain. So I think our work on bad ads combined with concerns about privacy and ad fraud suggests that there's a need for increased regulation and transparency in this space. So for example, we suggest that there should be common standards or regulations for acceptable ad content, particularly in political ad content, so that malicious advertisers cannot simply move to other ad networks with lower standards. And second, it is important to allow researchers to audit the practices of advertising networks, particularly when it comes to political advertising. And so we encourage more ad networks beyond Google and Facebook to release these public data sets to allow researchers to examine their practices. With that, thank you all for listening. A big thanks to all my collaborators on this project. So Professor Franzi Rosner, Professor Yoshi Kono, Miranda Way, and Theo Gregerson. If you'd like to learn more, please check out our project website at badads.cs.washington.edu. Thank you all for having me, and I look forward to your questions.
Great. Thanks, Eric. That was really, really fascinating research. And thanks for sharing this with us. One of the things that I found really interesting when I was not just listening to your talk, but I also read a little bit of your research, The study delved into not just bad ads, but also like what good ads could be. Can you shed a little bit of light over on that topic as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely, like, there is a mix of opinion. There's like a definitely a diversity of opinion in what people like and dislike in ads. And yeah, we came like people do find certain types of ads like pleasant and informative. So there's a bunch of reasons that they would like it. So one, like if people found ads entertaining or engaging. So if it was like funny or clever or maybe meaningful or personalizes the thing being sold. People also like ads, generally well designed, glossy ads, eye-catching colors, fonts, nice images, things like that. Or ads that were just, relevant to them, ads that were just simple, straightforward. It was clear what the product the ad is selling is. And if they know or trust like the advertiser, like if it's it's a brand name they know, the ad looks authentic and genuine. And lastly, like people liked it when ads were informative, bringing to them new opportunity, educating about new products and opportunities that they're actually interested in. So I think there's plenty of ways for advertising to be useful to people.
That's great. Personally, for you, what has been the most surprising thing out of this research?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think just constantly what I see is just how deep this rabbit hole goes. Like it just seems like there's like corners of like you can spend a lot of time on like good parts of the internet where if you're on like the New York Times, for example, you will mostly just get premium ads for like designer clothes or media things that are great. But if you go to some of the sketchier parts of the web, like there are so many bad ads. There are like these enormous panels of like clickbait native ad and then if you start to go into the landing pages, you see really the depth of the scams and like affiliate marketing and things targeting seniors and older people. Like it's just like cobwebs and spiders all the way down, and there's like no depth to how there's no end to how bad they get. And so yeah, it's a scary place, and I think there's a role for ad blockers, but also just the rest of the online ag ecosystem trying to clean this out and make the internet safer for people.
To me, something which was surprising was how many of them are selling like sketchy supplements. Like to me, that was a bit surprising. Like why specifically like supplements? Let's go for one more question. This is from Dragan. Can you share more details about how did you fine-tune Distilbert to classify political ads? More specifically, how did you label the training data set?
Yeah, that's a great question. So essentially, we actually manually labeled a lot of political ads ourselves. So this was a very simple like binary classifier. So is the ad political? Is it not? So basically, anything that had to do with U.S. politics, so mention a candidate, mention a political issue, it was political. Everything else not. We also scraped some ads from the Google political ad archive. We were able to pull some headlines from their search ads, and so we added that to our training data. And so yeah, and like pretty much just out of the box, we just trained a binary classifier using BERT, and it works pretty well. It's quite amazing what some of these language models do these days.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Eric. We have a couple of more questions, but we don't have enough time, so we'll take it offline on Slack. So if it would be really nice if you can just take a look and answer them over there. Once again, thanks a lot for sharing your knowledge and research. And yeah, thanks.
Great. Thanks so much for having me.